fans, welcome back to the F1 Masters podcast brought to you by AUBG Daily. As usual, you're with me Vasco, David and Harry, and for the first time you can see us with video thanks to our new additions to the team, Mari and Silvio, who are behind the camera. In this episode we will discuss the not so eventful Singapore Grand Prix.
We can start off with practice and a surprising P1 from Fernando Alonso on Friday, but after that there were other teams at the top. For example, Ferrari were fast on Friday as well.
Yeah, Ferrari, once again, I feel like showing promising pace on Friday, like they have for past few races now, and once again it meant nothing, but we'll get on to qualifying in the race. And yeah, Verstappen and McLaren, though, towards the end of practice, ended up looking like the main favorites for qualifying.
And in quali, Gasly went out in Q1, and probably the most disappointing thing for Red Bull was that Yuki Tsunoda was P15. After the last race, it was looking much better for Red Bull, and right now we're seeing the same old Yuki with the poor qualifying pace that he had throughout the whole year. And actually, the sad part is that the same thing happened with Liam Lawson, the same thing happened with Checo Perez. It seems like they're just meant to go out in Q2, even sometimes in Q1.
But Yuki Tsunoda was not the only disappointment in Q2, as Williams were both out in Q2, which was for me was unexpected. They have quite a good pace, as we saw in Baku as well, and they were actually later disqualified from qualifying because of I think their rear wing was higher than expected, like the width or something. So
it doesn't really matter because they were at the end of the field.
Yeah,
like at the beginning of the race.
Yeah, and in Q3, Isaac Hatcher was best of the rest, which was really impressive. Ferrari were P6 and P7. Lando Norris was P5 actually, which was kind of, disappointing on his side.
Yeah, also George Russell was the main star of qualifying, pole position, which came out of nowhere but was incredibly dominant. No one could even get close to him. His first lap was incredible, his second lap even slight improvement. I was extremely impressed by George Russell and totally deserved pole position and important for the championship, obviously. Lando Norris in P5, Oscar Piastri, championship leader in P3, but Max Verstappen managed to out-qualify both of them, still trying to chip away at the points lead.
Well, after this weekend, he's like 63 or 62 points away from Oscar Piastri, and it is not impossible, but it is highly doubtful. But talking about George Russell, fascinating weekend, and in general, Mercedes, they have been improving, I think, throughout the whole season, and currently I think they have the second best car out of everybody, and probably they're not even that far from McLaren, because as we discussed before recording, McLaren, the car that pulled up to the first race of the season, is very far away from the car that they have right now. Yes, they're still probably the fastest team, but they're definitely not as dominant as they have been, at least in the first, let's say, 5, 6, 7 races of the season.
And we can move on to the race now and start off with the podium finishers, which were Lando Norris in third place, Max Verstappen in second, and George Russell got the win. And at the race start, what happened was Lando Norris dived into turn 3 and he made contact with both Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri, which was a very unnecessary move. He could have, predicted things and maybe been more cautious, but yeah.
This close to fulfilling my prediction from last time.
Yeah.
It was very aggressive from Lando, which actually we haven't really seen from him quite a lot, but I admired it. He's fighting for the championship at the end of the day. It was important for him to get past Piastri, and he did. And I actually saw a quote from Jenson Button recently that he said that, in his opinion, that Oscar Piastri should have just, accepted that Lando got past him and had continued on with his race and not focused on deliberating whether this was the correct thing to do or not, because at the end of the day they're fighting for the world championship. So it's every man for themselves at this point, especially now that McLaren wrapped up the Constructors.
But here comes an additional detail, and that is I don't know if Lando had any damage to his car. At least it didn't seem like that. But the front wing of Oscar was partially broken, which probably slowed him down as we saw throughout the race. And this is like I think Oscar has the right to be at least a bit disappointed, both from the reaction of the team because this is not the first time that we see lack of reaction when it comes to him from McLaren, from Stewa and Zach Brown, and Lando. I like that he's more aggressive now because you cannot win championship if you're calm and you don't fight for it. But at the same time, I think Oscar deserves it more. And if the team is favoring Lando, I would be quite disappointed. Like to see till the end of the season, McLaren to continue to be like favoring Lando because I don't see the reason behind that. I'm literally so confused about that.
I mean, we discussed it about Monza as well after his slow stop. I mean, Piastri had a slow stop this time, but there was no position change, so therefore there was no swap for McLaren, and this is, in my opinion, like very hypocritical, and things like this just happen. And I think now though that they've wrapped up the constructors, McLaren have nothing to lose, so I would expect them to let them race for the rest of the season.
But also after the race, I saw that McLaren they celebrated their championship, and then Oscar was not there. He was not on the podium. He was so pissed off with what happened at the start that he just decided to not go and celebrate. So this shows how he feels right now towards the team, and the intra-team dynamic right now is in a crisis moment, really.
Yeah, he plugged off the radio as well at the end. He was extremely frustrated throughout the whole race, and I can understand his frustration, but over the last few races, I feel like he has, in a way, become, I don't know, not maybe arrogant, but he is just constantly started to complain about how this is unfair, that, and I want to see the Piastri at the start of the season that was ruthless, cold-blooded, just domination start to finish no matter what happens, not afraid to make any moves. Obviously the car is at a different place now, but now I think the championship, when it's really on his mind, I feel like mentally he's starting to show some cracks.
I just see 2007 in this, and it is like the comparisons are so obvious. Like two really dominant drivers that in McLaren that are fighting really close for the championship, and if the third guy wins once again, then that would be fantastic. And talking about the third guy, I think fantastic race from Verstappen, even though he made a mistake at one point that didn't harm his overall performance. He defended really well against Lando, even though the McLaren was clearly faster. And I think that was the best that he could get out of the race. They tried a bit of a different strategy with softs in the beginning, but it didn't really improve the performance of the Red Bull, and as he didn't manage to jump over Russell at the beginning of the race, I think P2 was the best that he could get, and even though he is still far away from Lando and Oscar, he still managed to reduce this point advantage, even with as I said, six points. But this is still clearly better than nothing.
And we can also talk about Fernando Alonso, who had a really interesting race because he managed to be best of the rest. I mean, P7, really well done. After Lewis Hamilton's penalty, we'll talk about that. But he made another memorable team radio, even two of these, I think. One was about hero of the race, I think, and the other one was when he was complaining once again to his team. It's so funny every time.
Was it him being like, if you talk to me once again, then I'll just plug off the radio.
Yeah.
And also shout out to Lance Stroll, who was like the funniest comment throughout the whole season about the second funniest after must be the water.
Yeah.
But the thing about his tires being like 100 laps old, that was pure comedy.
It was especially funny when his tires were like 20 laps fresher than the other person you were talking about.
Yeah, and then also he managed to stay on the softs for like 35 or 40 laps, which was impressive actually. We
Yeah.
have to acknowledge that.
The Aston Martin strategy, I mean, it was weird, but for Alonso it really worked. And it was strange because Alonso was like so mad the whole race. He was like arguing with his team, like so frustrated. And then he finds a way to finish in P7. He had great pace in the second stint. And yeah, beat Lewis Hamilton in the end, but we'll talk about that, of course. But overtook, his main contenders for best of the rest and picks up crucial points for Aston Martin in the Constructors battle.
Fernando was on a mission and he was, I think he won driver of the day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was absolutely deserved. And let's move on to Ferrari because there is, as every week, there is a lot to discuss there because the problems with Hamilton, because the strategy looked fantastic. I really questioned it, but softs on Hamilton with like 15-20 laps to go, that worked miracles. And in the end, like things, it was screwed up like for 2 laps, I think.
Well, Ferrari, they had nothing to lose, in my opinion, with that pit stop. They had a 40-second gap to the car behind. Yeah, the pace was even better than I think any of us anticipated. I mean, we watched the race together and we were discussing how these tires are going to go off eventually, but it seemed like they didn't. And Charles Leclerc, who was in P5 basically the whole race, eventually got overtaken by Kimi Antonelli. It was weird because the TV director just decided not to show us at all what was going on there. Lewis Hamilton eventually caught up, got past Charles Leclerc, and he was about to catch up to Kimi Antonelli, and then his brake decided to just go off the rails pretty much and burn up, and he couldn't hit the brakes for like 3 laps or something, or 2 laps.
2 laps, I
Two
think.
laps at the end of the race, and he lost 55 seconds on his last lap. And somehow he kept Fernando Alonso behind, but after we saw the replays, he corner cut basically everywhere in order to ensure that he kept that place. It was so frustrating because Lewis had really good pace. He finished with the fastest lap of the race and could have beaten Antonelli, but once again, something like had to go wrong because it's Ferrari. Although P5 in general wouldn't have been a great result for the team, it still would have been, I think, satisfying for them to see him actually make that progress and get a decent result.
And on the contrary, Kimi Antonelli, I was impressed by him. Harry, your comments.
Yeah,
As a
2 races in
Mercedes
a
fan.
row. Yeah, he got in the top 5 in both races, which is something new for him. I saw that this is the first time he has done it this season. So really, he's finally starting to get consistent. Not as consistent as George Russell, as he's racking up podiums and race wins, but still, this is signs of improvement from Kimi Antonelli, and I hope that he can keep it up till the rest of the season.
I want to shout out the absolutely outrageous dive bomb he did on Charles Leclerc. It was as big of a gamble as the one in Zandvoort, but this time he actually made it stick, although it was very risky, very impressive move. And yeah, I like that even though after that Zandvoort crash, that didn't hurt his confidence and he's still trying to go for these moves. And it paid off in the end and he beat both Ferraris, so well-deserved result.
And another note of the race, I was really surprised that we didn't see safety car or red flag or just some kind of chaos. The closest thing was, yeah, the little touch between the McLarens in the beginning, but it could have been worse. And Nico Hülkenberg's spin, which I once again expected to be much worse, to at least deploy like yellow flags for 2, 3, 4 laps. Nothing like that happened. Second year in a row in Singapore where we don't see any chaos, and I am a bit disappointed because this is the race where all that crazy stuff happens, and we just haven't seen it because racing there, it's not that bad. It's not Monaco level of racing, but it is not that bad. Cars can overtake each other, but it is not the best. So yeah. In general, the race wasn't the most interesting, actually, but Yeah, you know there are races like that throughout the season. Also to mention some battles in the midfield. There was a heavy traffic train at one point. I remember when we were watching it together. There were like two cars on the left side of the field of the map, and like the rest of the cars were like stuck to each other. But in general, I don't think that there are a lot of other interesting things to be discussed for the race.
We can go through the championship actually, and as we already mentioned, McLaren wrapped it up, but Mercedes actually increased their advantage in second place, which is really important to them, and Ferrari need to really improve in the next races because they're falling behind.
I mean, Ferrari, they're like Red Bull are catching up to them, which is very concerning for Ferrari. They cannot afford to lose to a one-person team, and if they do, this would be a diabolical end to the season. Considering they have been running second basically the whole season, but these last few races, I don't really know what's happened, but they've really fallen off the pace. I don't understand why. In Hungary, they got pole position, and then after that, they have been nowhere on pace, not even close to pole position, like over half a second off of George Russell in qualifying. Just disaster. No race pace either. Very concerning, and I doubt they're making any updates to the car for the final races as 2026 is approaching, and that's the priority at this point. But we'll see how it develops. I think Mercedes though are looking more and more confident and will get established into that second place.
Definitely. My take is that Mercedes they got a bit better, but the thing is that their two drivers stepped up like big time, and we haven't seen, as I repeat from the beginning of the season, we haven't seen that from Hamilton throughout the whole season. This was the first time when I saw something more interesting from Hamilton, and the car just decided, oh, I'm not going to stop here anymore, and. Yeah, and also for Verstappen, he also stepped up in the past few races. Actually, at the beginning of the season we saw some troubles in his performance, but definitely, in the past few races we've seen that he can fight for the championship. At least there is some hope, and we can move on to the highlight of the weekend.
I'll start and say that it was George Russell's masterclass, both in qualifying and in the race. I mean, really high level of performance and really impressive.
George Russell as well, I agree. Similar dominance to what he did in Canada. Although never in the spotlight, once again the meme, George Russell does nothing, he gets P1. But it's not really like doing nothing, it's just he is really putting in the work, and he has been so good this year. Like, I think his best season in F1. And he has won 2 races now. Very, very impressed with George Russell. Dominated from start to finish, was never once under threat from anyone. So, thoroughly deserved the win.
Absolutely, shout out to George Russell, Mr. Consistent, and to be just a bit different. I would say that my highlight of the weekend is Fernando Alonso because he made the race interesting. He had a lot of overtakes. He was in the spotlight from the start to the end, and he even won Driver of the Day. So really impressive performance from Fernando, even doing it at like 100 years of age. And moving on to surprises and disappointments.
Yeah, as we were on the Fernando Alonso hype train, he was my surprise. Even after qualifying, he had a pretty decent qualifying, but he seemed so mad about his strategy that I thought he was screwed and was going to finish like P13 or something, but he was steadily making the positions and eventually got up to Lewis Hamilton. Of course, he had a car failure, but he got P7, he got the points. Even under all the rage, he managed to get it out on track and get the result. And my disappointment, McLaren, terrible once again at managing their drivers. But I'm also disappointed in both Norris and Piastri. They were nowhere the whole race. They had a poor qualifying. Norris, who was all behind Verstappen, although yes, Verstappen was good at defending, Norris did not really put in a serious attempt at attacking Verstappen, and this is something you need to do in the championship fight. Whereas Oscar was nowhere, and all he did was complain throughout the whole race, which, you know, if you want to be a champion, you gotta get behind this, get this behind you and move forward and focus on what's happening now. You cannot change the past, so he should stop dwelling on something that happens in the race at the beginning for the whole race.
Yeah, my surprise is also Fernando Alonso, and my disappointment is Pierre Gasly, who had a really messy qualifying and he was nowhere to be seen in the race. Really forgettable weekend by him.
Franco Colapinto dominated him the whole weekend, which is unbelievable to say.
Yeah.
And for my once again, Fernando Alonso, shout out to him, really surprised me. And I want to mention McLaren as well, and the fact that they don't look as fast as at the beginning of the season. And if that continues, then we can see really interesting ending to the season. And my disappointment, Ferrari, as usual, they were just disappointing throughout the whole weekend. They were nowhere near the podium, even once during the race. And even when we saw Lewis Hamilton like stepping up big time and doing the thing that he does best, racing, and the car let him down. So really disappointing weekend once again for them. And last things last, predictions.
Right, so I had one correct. Oli Berman got points. And my other one was 3 cars will be out on lap 1. I predicted chaos and it didn't happen. But for Kota, my predictions, one of them is one McLaren will be off the podium once again. And the other one, Sauber double points, which seems highly unlikely, but I'll stick with it.
Yeah, it would be definitely cool to see. My predictions, 2 safety cars during the race, as we already established. Terrible race, so boring, nothing happened. Everyone finished the race actually, so. And Lewis Hamilton podium. Why do I keep predicting good things for Ferrari? We may never know. The copium is running high here though. Now my predictions for Kota. I've gone with a bit of out of the box, I think, I hope. My first prediction is Liam Lawson will finish in the top 7. I don't know why, but he's always good around Kota. And this year he has put some performances that can be that caliber, so I am hopeful. My other prediction, super random. I don't care if it's right or wrong, but we see the most random celebrities at races in the US, and my prediction is that Sabrina Carpenter will be at the race. I have no idea if this will be correct, but if it's correct, this will go down in history as the greatest prediction on this podcast.
I guess. For my predictions, McLaren 1-2 in quali, couldn't have been further from the truth, and both McLarens to crash at the beginning of the race. That was so close to happening. That would have been so genius from my side, but once again, 2 wrong predictions. And my 2 predictions for Kota are new driver on the podium. I don't know who it will be. It may be like Franco Colapinto, this type of craziness. I don't know, but there would be driver that hasn't stepped up on the podium so far this season. And no safety cars and no red flags during the whole weekend is my other prediction. We would see if that is going to happen, but we'll see. I cannot wait actually for Kota. This is one of my favorite races of the season, and for sure the best one in the US, the best track in the US.
I absolutely agree, and I think this is all for today from us. We're looking forward to the next podcast episode. Till then, like, subscribe, follow us in AUBG Daily on Instagram and Facebook, and stay tuned for more content. Thank you, and remember,
if you no longer go for a gap that exists,
You're no longer a racing driver.